The most practical use case I've used AI for this week is I had to have a funeral for my daughter's hamster, and I had ChatGPT write a eulogy for me for a hamster named Biscuit.
We made a strategic decision to move the IVR and replace it with an AI agent.
They're not replacing people. What they're doing is they're bringing up their service levels.
You have to see for what it can be versus than what it is right now. There's a saying in the AI community that this is the worst it'll ever be.
If we're not leveraging these tools, our competition is going to leverage these tools. And we're not talking about killing some jobs. We're talking about killing our own companies, right?
If you are in a repetitive and mundane role, if you are or someone you love and you know, they should definitely be using this opportunity while they have the time to upskill or reskill.
Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee Break with Jake. We have this call every Friday at 11 a.m. And the purpose of the call is for me to bring together security industry professionals from all over the country and in some cases all over the world. My goal, really selfishly, is to learn from you because I found that the most important things I know, I've learned from other people. So I really want to thank you for joining the call, for sharing your insights, for asking really great questions. On today's call, I'm really excited to be joined by Don Moran, and Don is with us to talk about practical use cases for AI. Welcome, Don. I'm so glad to have you on the call. And Don and I met a few months ago. First, we connected online, and then we connected in person. And in a world where so much interaction is limited to online interaction, I always enjoy the opportunity for real interaction in person. And so it was really great to meet you in person and learn a little bit more about your business and your career at ESX. And so, Don, if you would, kind of before we get into use cases for AI and some of the cool things that you're doing, could you tell us a little bit about you and your background?
So I've been in the industry for about 13 years, and I worked in sales the entire time. I started at Tyco Integrated Security that got acquired by Johnson Controls, worked with them between Long Island, New York, and West Palm Beach, and then moved over to the manufacturing side with Brevo. I was with Brevo for give or take 7 years about. And then from there, I went to Honeywell, where I would say either fully wrapped up my career working for someone in the industry or at least temporarily before I went into entrepreneurship to start what I'm doing now. And when I was at Brevo, ran their enterprise end user team outside of just managing the channel. And then when I was at Honeywell, ran a breakthrough technology initiative where we were growing their cloud business between the US and Europe. And so I traveled between both and around the country to meet our dealers. And then, and then about 3 years ago, I got into ChatGPT and was super curious to figure out what this stuff is. Went back to school outside of my MBA with concentration in information systems and got a no-code 80-hour certificate from MIT about basically building AI machine learning models from the ground up. Just to give me some foundational knowledge, so I was less of a spectator and more of a player in the game. But that still wasn't enough, right? Because a lot of it was just death scrolls on learning about YouTube, completely consumed by it. It turned into more than just a hobby, a lifestyle, and then eventually was like, hey, there's got to be a way to make money doing this. And then that's when I opened up my current company, HighlandTech, that's been running publicly now for just about 6 months, and it's been an incredible journey since. And so I've run also an industry leading podcast called AI FISEC today, where we focus on, I would say, demystifying AI and then looking at practical use cases around AI within the physical security industry. A lot of our guests have been manufacturers, which obviously as integrators, as many of you might be, just consume the product that they build. And so there's interesting discussions about like what's happening today, what could happen in the future. We just wrapped up the 31st episode, and we've had, mostly this third season between all around the C-suite, CEOs, CSOs, presidents, things like this. And so that's what we're doing now. And then happy to talk about the business that we're working in currently, but that's my background.
So, you talk about these big name, really great companies in the industry, and you've had a successful career, and then all of a sudden you decide to make the jump into the entrepreneurial journey. That's a little bit crazy, Don. I mean, you must have felt pretty strong about the opportunity with this AI stuff. Can you tell us, before we get into AI, I know we got a lot of small business owners, entrepreneurs on here. What was it? Why did you make the jump into this?
Honestly, I was more interested in it than what was happening in the security industry. I think this industry's done really well for me, and I'm grateful to have been a part of it. But there was something about looking on one side where we're still talking about prox cards, and the other side where we're talking about the most transformational technology of humankind probably ever, or maybe in the last technology that we'll see. And it just felt like I needed to do something about it. I don't like. I'm a lifelong learner. I've been to school, many, many times, and this was no different. A lot of it was self-taught, and so I just, it was. We've seen while history doesn't repeat, it does rhyme, and we've been here before. And there's been industrial revolutions. We've learned about calling the internet a fad. We learned about the cellular piece. We learned about past situations of industrial where we didn't take it seriously. I think and most people have learned from that. And I think a lot of the impression around generative AI is stuff that powers what we're doing today. When it came out, a lot of it was like, well, it's cool to make pictures and poems. But I feel, I never saw that. You have to see for what it can be versus than what it is right now. There's a saying in the AI community that this is the worst it'll ever be. So knowing that and believing that and seeing what's rhymed in the history, I was like, I got to do something about this. And so, yeah, it was tough. I left at the height of my career, really financially, role wise, working at a Fortune 100 company, and I had a great boss, great team. But really, what the opportunity ahead is, while it's uncharted waters, and I think I'm a trailblazer within the security industry. I don't know another company that's doing what I'm doing right now. It's tough. It's tough, right? Because a lot of us in the security industry are very risk averse, which makes it hard to adopt new technology. I was cloud for a long time, and RMR is still, and cloud still somewhat of an enigma in some cases. But AI is something that I, feel like is a huge force and a strong force, something not to be ignored. And it's showing. I mean, you can look at on the investment.
I think of AI as Chat GPT, and I think we have some AI built into our Outlook now, and I have AI headshots that we played around with to try to make employee headshots a little bit easier. I tried it. It made my face look unbelievably smooth, which was kind of a nice thing, but my wife said it looked fake. And then the most practical use case I've used AI for this week is I had to have a funeral for my daughter's hamster, and I had ChatGPT write a eulogy for me for a hamster named Biscuit. Now, I would bet that my very simple understanding of AI is going to be very much overshadowed by, just all the really cool things that you know about it, all the way, yeah, rest in peace, Biscuit, all the really cool ways that you leverage it. And I know in our conversation, we were talking about things that was kind of making my mind melt a little bit. You were talking about this concept of AI agents and what you do with that. Could you explain to me what does what does your business do, and what the heck are these AI agents?
Yeah, so first, my company, HighlandTech, we solve the problem of repetitive and mundane tasks for small, medium businesses, which is technically any business under $100 million. So it's a big, big chunk of business with something called agents. So I just gave a presentation in front of 80 businesses the other week where I did an AI 101. And in that, I brought them my best content, which I'll talk to you about today, some of what that included. And one of those is we look at these, how we make sense of it, is you consume it as a business in two forms. One is an AI assistant. That's your ChatGPT, your Microsoft Copilot, your Google Gemini for business. And the other side is this thing called AI agents, which we're gonna define. Really, when it comes to the assistants, they need you to live, right? You put something in, you get something out, and it's in the form of a chatbot, right? So visually, we understand it. 8 out of 10 people use it. They bring their own tools to work many of the times, and that's that, right? But this other side around AI agents can be quote unquote ambient in nature. And what that ambient means is that they can operate in the background with no human intervention. And they can therefore automate some, most, or in some rare cases, all of some business process. When you hear about AI taking jobs, it's AI agents, not the chatbots, right? And so these AI agents, let's call it business process automation, which is just Boolean logic. If I connect this thing to this thing to this thing, right? If this happens, then this happens. And then you have robot process automation, which what that incorporated was a subset of AI called machine learning. Just think of it, the way I explained it in the training is if you think of a tree as the brains, the amount of branches, like your brain has synapses, it's like one tree, you know? So it's limited in its capability and its focus. And you'll see a lot of machine learning being used in narrow applications, like for example, a robot in a manufacturing plant that needs to move an arm from here to here, right? It's the same thing over and over, but it still has some what they call limited agency where it decides to say, okay, I know that this is a block and I'm going to pick it over here. So it has to make some kind of decision. But it is just like business process automation. This is a term from AI called deterministic. So you can determine exactly what it's going to do, right? Now where we're at today is something called agentic automation. So agents, the term agents derives from the term agency. An agency, you could look at that as having free will. So as humans, we have free will to decide what we want to do based on some knowledge, maybe some tools, whatever, right? The agents also have free will, otherwise known as agency, to decide what they want to do based on some company knowledge, based on some tools, whether it integrates with your CRM, ERP system, service ticket system, whatever, to do something, to automate something. And where they're really good in today's age is when we combine the best of business process automation, where we can determine the workflow. If this happens, then this happens. But then when it gets gray or when you can't have all the instructions, that's when we can inject these agents. And that's pretty cool. So I'll give you a simple example, right? Let's say we're all on this call because we want to learn more about AI and we have our out of office message. The business process automation version would say, someone sends you an email, your email will automatically send them back the same fixed message every time. That's an automation, right? The other version on today's agentic workflow side or agentic automation side is that an agentic's used to describe agents, right? Is that instead of just responding with that message, it would read the person's message, respond with some custom version based on what it read, because it understands context and natural language. But then what it could then do is decide, is that because we're in the sales and service business, right? SSO offices for integrators. Is this a service issue or is this a sales issue? And you can determine what that means for your business. And then if it's a sales issue or a sales opportunity, I can create a lead within my CRM that my sales team can follow up on. If it's a service issue, I can create a ticket that my install or service team can follow up on, all while I'm sitting on this call. So what we did is we gave it some knowledge and some access to my tools. In this example, knowledge would be what is service related, what is sales related. I define that as a business. And then we give it the access to my tools, which is my email service. And by that way, when I say, when you get this message, you now have agency, you have free will to decide what to do with it based on the parameters or what we call guardrails in the AI space to what to do with it. So it's a lot of words just to say these, you can think of these as digital workers. This is like really the first start of how we start to automate repetitive things that suck and no one wants to do. But the good news is we have some control over that flow. Now, the way Silicon Valley looks at it, and I'll end on this, Jake, is I would call more of an R&D stage where they say you give the agent a goal and it will just go and do it. So it has access to all your tools, all your data. There are some examples of that around, but they're few and they're very much an experimental stage, I would argue. And so really the practicality, since it's a practical use case call, what we're seeing is business process automation with a limited amount of agent work. But ultimately, it still will process some, most, or in rare cases, all of a business process.
Yeah, I saw something last week. I was visiting a central station, and this kind of blew my mind. They had a board up with different metrics about the central station, and one of the metrics was the number of AI agent handled customer interactions. And I generally, when I think about AI and these AI agents, I'm thinking about, maybe it's an email, maybe it's a chat bot on your website, maybe it's tech support, right? Where you're typing in your questions and it's giving you access to resources. But now we're talking about AI that's actually, it sounds like a person on the other end. I mean, we're not talking about just automating text messages. These folks are having actual AI voice agent calls with subscribers And, you talk about eliminating, tasks that are mundane, maybe low value, maybe don't really need a person for it. Gosh, what an incredible use case. And so important for an industry that really relies on scaled, highly competitive, central stations that are able to keep their costs down, but still provide a lot of value to subscribers and thereby value to their dealer partners. Really mind blowing stuff. And so there's that right there, because I guess I've been looking for, use cases recently. When you look for something, you find it. Tell me about what is another practical use case that like a security systems integrator might be using an AI agent for on a daily basis?
Yeah, so definitely collected a lot of use cases over the last several months, and I would break it down. Coming from Tyco, like ADT era, like we looked at these SSO offices. So we would look at our business. If I looked at it in two buckets, sales and service, that's the way I would start to break this down pretty basic. So a lot of people when they think about this AI, they're like, man, this ain't gonna get me leads. I've been a sales guy my whole career and in this industry, and I would argue that maybe top of funnel to get you appointments. The issue though is that these things are not all created the same. And what ends up happening is developers or products get sloppy because they want to sell them to you like a standard cloud application, which basically means that everybody sounds the same. So if you've ever got a message from these trying to get an appointment with you, they either get some information about you wrong, or it sounds like the last 5 messages you got, which none of which will drive you to get a meeting.
It's funny you say that. Just yesterday, I had this suspicion. I'd engaged with we'll say it's a type of consultant, and I was looking for some specific help. And I connected with this guy, and man, he was emailing me so consistently. I almost thought, like, maybe this guy isn't real. Like, I don't know. Like, it's starting to seem at first, I respected his tenacity and I respected how, consistently he was following up. And then yesterday he blew it. He sent me a message that I realized had scraped information from my LinkedIn posts and then kind of regurgitated it back into an email. And it was like right then that I realized, hey, this guy that, by the way, is got to be around 70 years old, right? Probably around 70 years old. He is using an AI agent to try to, to get me to move to the next step and engaging him. And I thought to myself, like, wow, that's wild. But to your point, you have to be careful, because as soon as I realized it, like this was the kind of person that I was wanting to hire for their real expertise. Once I realized that some of what our interaction had been was AI, like immediately I was like, no, this is, and maybe I'm wrong for it. Maybe I should have just accepted that this guy was using a tool, but it was really a turnoff for me.
And you described it perfectly, right? From the end, from the receiving end, right? Like, so what you experience there, in the AI community call it a horizontal agent. And those are literally like SaaS applications where you drop in some knowledge, you connect it to your LinkedIn, blah, 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 and they promise to go get you leads. From an agent builder, we're an engineering company at HighlandTech. I can feel and sense the sloppiness in that. So what happens is because it's not you, or it's not someone you hire that can give a more of a tailored approach, like a vertical agent would, that you can make it very specific on how it reaches out so it matches your brand voice. You're in marketing, so you understand a lot of the nuances what I'm talking about, but like getting those details are really important. I mean, from a sales perspective, relationships are a big deal, you know, but I would argue that the biggest opportunity is actually around the service side. Anytime I work with integrators, I think the biggest difference between one and the other is their ability to service that customer. How fast do they pick up the phone? Are they sending texts that are knowledgeable, that are certified on the product that they're going to go see? Do they know a problem that's happening before the customer does? And can they drive that kind of experience? Because a lot of times I work with integrators, they get referral business, which is great. But that ability to service is, I think, the biggest opportunity. And so that's why a lot of what we do at HighlandTech is focused on operational improvements, and that is around service. So I'll give you some examples. So one is, actually, I did also allude to it a bit ago, so I'll start with that. So it's having a 24/7 service agent that basically would monitor your inbox, whether you have one or many service inbox boxes, and then being able to identify, one, is it a new customer, right? Hopefully it's an existing customer. That's the ones that's going to be emailing your service inbox. That would then connect to your service ticket system. Let's say it's Sedona Office or WeSuite or whatever, and would be able to create a service ticket, come back to the message, let the customer know, hey, we created a service ticket. We will have someone reach out to you to schedule in this amount of time. That's like version 1. Version 2 could actually try to go through tech support or tier 1 tech support. And it would use an AI search tool, which is perfect for this. Because usually in tier 1 tech support, is it turned on? Did you power cycle it? Is the firmware updated? Check your internet connection, unplug and plug back your router in, things like this. And so that's like version 2, where it can take them through a simple tech support triage. So I actually ran into the situation. I won't say with what company, their privacy, but they had a 5-hour wait time at one point. It was horrible, right, for our servicing our dealers. And so I made an agent. It was a light agent at the time to help my sales team. And I said, hey, if you get an email from your dealers that are asking about service issues, take a screenshot of what the problem is, drop it inside of this agent and say, how do I fix this? And I gave it not all of our installation, our service guides, and the agent would respond with step-by-step, because I asked it to, here's what you do, and just send it to the dealer and say, hey, we're going to try to escalate this to get you someone available, but for now, please follow these steps. And you'd be amazed, probably half of the outreach was resolved by those steps, which is incredible. So
Amazing.
From a tier 1 perspective, imagine if you can immediately self-serve your customer to go through the basics. Because most of the time it's like my password didn't work. Like it can be especially with SaaS applications, cloud applications, because they, are self-updating in a lot of ways. What a great opportunity to service them better. So that's a simple one. The other one that we've seen is around, I'll use in the same example so it flows easier, service and inspection scheduling. Let's say in that same example where it creates a ticket, but you want to take the next step for it to identify based on it flows through tier 1 support. And the customer's like, yep, I went through those steps and it didn't fix my issue. That next inbound email could then say, okay, we were going to go ahead and schedule a service ticket, goes through your ticketing system, schedules it, comes back and says, hey, your service has been scheduled for this afternoon between the hours of 1 p.m. and 4 p.m., whatever it works out to be, right? Whether it's specific or if it's a time range. The other one is inspections, right? You got to reach out to customers in order to do your fire alarm inspections, let's say, because I know they're quarterly a lot of times. What if it's from the sprinkler side? Once a year, I think, still, if it's on the fire alarm side. And so having that outreach to make sure that inspection is attended, because you often need the customer to attend to sign off on that inspection, is another thing to do.
When we think about I think about this from my own experience. I have needed some help at the house, let's say. Like I've needed a plumber or an HVAC contractor. And so, I've filled out a form online and and who I end up going with is usually one of the first 2 people that call me and connect, are actually able to make that connection. Right. And I think about a lot of times there's other folks on that list, right? Like other people that received that lead from whatever platform I was using to request a contractor. And then I see the flip side. For those of you that don't know, I have a Facebook group, Burglar Alarms Online. We have over 10,000 security industry professionals in it. And one of the biggest complaints that we see is that our dealers or members of the group sign up for one of these lead service platforms, these lead service providers where, they have pay-per-click campaigns trying to get these leads directed to the contractors. And they always say something like this: the leads are very low quality. They don't convert. I don't get, it seems like other people have called them before I get to them. And I ask them, how long does it usually take you to get back to them? And it's usually, within a few hours. And I think to myself as a consumer, like, I don't have a few hours. I have a problem. I need something fixed. I don't care. I'm not going to spend lots and lots of time researching this. I just need a solution. We talk about these AI agents as being able to, provide a response, to be proactive about troubleshooting, to be able to help with scheduling. And on the one hand, I'm like, oh man, Don's killing jobs. This guy's a one-man machine out there, taking out jobs, right? But then I think to myself, like, it's not about getting rid of jobs. It's about providing a better experience for your customer, right? Like this isn't just about lowering overhead, and it does do that, right? But it's about providing a better experience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And here's the reality, right? Like, what people hate more than losing time and money is change. And everyone is going to experience a lot of change, especially over the next 5 years. So just deal with it, right? But I would say this: if you are in a repetitive and mundane role, if you are or someone you love and you know, they should definitely be using this opportunity while they have the time to upskill or reskill, right? So here's what I did: I was a sales leader, right? This is going fine. But I was like, I got to do something because I would love to be relevant in 10 years in a bigger way, right? So I went down a painful road of learning a totally different industry, a new technology. It completely transformed my life as a result. I'm not expecting people to go to that extreme, but I would say, like, I'll give you an example. Like, let's say there's an administrative assistant that works for the company and they're handling a lot of this scheduling and, customer calls and things that maybe an AI agent could do. But that same administrative assistant to the executive, let's say, is incredible with people. If you ever had an employee that you just felt like, oh man, I would love to get them into a bigger role. I just don't have an opportunity. I don't have an opening yet on the books. If you had an agent fill in that gap, but then gave you the opening to promote them, so that way they can climb, they can reach their potential in life. Why wouldn't you do that, right? I think nobody rises to low expectations. And so I think there's an opportunity here where people that have those roles that technology can do, that they can adjust, right? And they have to. And I know it's going to be tough for people, but to your point, actually one big opportunity, we haven't done it yet in the industry, coming from what I've seen with the AI community, some of the highest conversion rates of leads from an AI standpoint, is not AI cold reaching out, is when you get that lead come in and having something either answer the phone, or if it's your old expiring leads because they reached out to you at some point, the agent proactively calls the customer with the goal to book a meeting and say, "Hey, yeah, Jake, I saw you had reached out. You filled out a form and you can teach it all the objections. It'll never stutter, right? It's going to call like when you need it to call, right?" And because as a seller, I just want that meeting on my desk. I want the ones that are going to close the most so I can make more money, right? So if I'm dependent on someone, whether or not they decide to call because they don't feel like it, they're not in the best of mood, especially as an owner of a company. If I got all these leads that I've come through that I paid probably a marketing company good money for, and I have no seller that's going to reach out to them consistently or most importantly, enthusiastically, then I'm not going to convert anything. But these things won't miss a beat, right? And you can absolutely do it, but within a narrow focus. And that was something that I said earlier, but I want to implore this. AI agents are good at doing one thing really well. This whole idea of an omniscient AI, I just throw at it and it figures it out, is complete malarkey. It's mostly about what is this one thing it needs to do. So when I say use cases, that's one agent that handles that one workflow. And I've got a bunch of other use cases we can cover too whenever we're ready.
Yeah, so, I think about, first of all, if you're not buying from me today, you're probably going to get a phone call or email or text message from AI Jake within the next week that's going to try to set an appointment for you and I to get together. So don't be alarmed. I might even make AI Jake stutter a little bit just so it seems like a little bit more real. But I have heard that actually some of these AI folks, they'll clear their throat or pause or something's not just right, makes it seem a little bit more real. I say that, but I gotta be honest with you. I'd have no idea as a business owner where to start with that, right? Like I think, hey, I should have a team of AI agents out there banging on every leads list saying, hey, do you want to have your products blessed and branded? Of course you do, right? And like let's send us your logo and we'll get that set up. That sounds great. I think we should do that. I have no idea where to start, right? So, understanding that small business owners like me, we want to use AI tools and AI agents, but we don't know where to start. What would you say some of the biggest barriers are, and how do you help folks like me start to leverage this kind of technology?
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed pretty quickly was that of who was buying and who was not, was a lot of it was mindset related. And so if you ever heard of the technology adoption curve, like that was my first experience to see how that was so true. Now I felt that in a cloud space, but I never really paid attention to it because it was access control, and people just kind of got that, right? This whole space seems kind of black boxy, like it's very ambiguous, and and so there's a lot of questions. And hopefully we can demystify a little bit of that today, or we have so far. But what I would say is, I think in order to correct my business, and I've said this before on social, I have to self-reflect about where my mindset is on that technology adoption curve. So if you're not familiar, it's a spectrum of whether you're, hyped about AI or you're very hesitant. So hyped
Can I just
is,
say I'm cautiously optimistic? Can I be
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. So that term is around the early majority side. And so the early majority, so you have innovators, early adopters, early majority, which is the bulk. I would say the security industry is in the early majority side, most of them, meaning that they're open to it. But what they need are things like references, proof. I need a bunch of use cases. It probably takes more meetings to close them because they need to grow through the trust barrier, right? But I think beyond that, what I said in the AI training is, a lot of people are like, well, tell me what AI can do and all this. It's look at the problem that you're solving. It's like the age old thing that we all go back to, and especially the industry, because we don't want a product centric sell. We want a problem centric sell ourselves and our customers. And so from that problem centric perspective, it's like, what are my repetitive mundane tasks? And so when I did the training, there's two ways you can look at this. And I have plenty of visual content if it's needed. One is, there's a general perspective. The general perspective is, what are the use cases? I'm giving you those on this call, right? I got a dozen more I could talk about. And so I get those, and someone might be like, hey, that's me. I have that problem. Cool. Great. The thing is, what I think that doesn't do is, it's actually the problem that they're showing with an overuse of like ChatGPT, where people are getting dumber, meaning that people aren't trying, meaning that if they own a business and they run a business, or they have leadership in that business, is to say, what are our problems right now that are the most pressing? So that's a specific side. The specific side, what that does is, it makes it super easy to prioritize, because you're literally just saying, hey guys, go to my department heads. I go to COO. Okay, go to my HR director, go to the HR generalist, the recruiter, and then work with the team over a couple of weeks, maybe a month at most. Get those repetitive mundane tasks, prioritize the list, and draw up the workflow of what that process looks like. Because when we build these agents, we don't just talk to it and it goes and builds its thing. If you remember from earlier in the call, it's business process automation. So we need to understand every step. But where it gets gray and ambiguous is when we inject these agents. When we say, okay, now go do your thing based on a set of knowledge, instructions, tools you have access to finalize the workflow, the business process, right? So that would be my thing, right? What I would take away from the training I did is, understand, it seems simple, but I don't think it is, because otherwise people would do it all the time right now, is identify repetitive tasks, but be specific about it if you can. General, you can go fast, but it's not as deep as a problem. So you're less likely to move forward on the project, spend money on the project. If you spend some time to go specific, which I can do with people if they need help with that, that they're more likely to move forward with the project. They're more likely to get all the details, and then therefore be able to sell it to their board or their stakeholders to say, this is a huge problem. We've had this every day, and we're willing to pay to make it go away.
So, it's an interesting point about understanding the process deeply, because I think about mundane, repetitive tasks, and I'm thinking of one in particular right now, related to return merchandise processing on our side, right? It'd be great if everything just went out and nothing ever came back. That's in a dream world. That's my model. It's not the case, right? Even with a very low failure rate, as volume increases, so do RMAs. But I think about what you're talking about here, and taking the time to deep dive into the processes to get it right, how relevant that is to that particular situation, right? I mean, we work with lots of different manufacturers. They have lots of different warranty policies. Some of them need case numbers. Some of them don't need case numbers. If I just said, hey, let's create an RMA AI agent to do it, because this is a mundane, repetitive task, sometimes it gets a little bit bogged down. We've got folks, trying to play catch up on it. If I just threw an AI agent at it, well, gosh, we could get it wrong. We could end up not getting the relevant, important information that we need in order to complete that process when those products come back. And so you talk about getting a deep understanding of the process itself. How do you do that? I'm sure that there's probably business owners or business leaders that you work with that may know they have this thing that needs automation or, an AI, but they don't necessarily have a well documented process. So do you get involved, very deeply on helping them to understanding exactly what the process is and how it should work?
Yes. The good and bad news is that no one has their process documented for the most, I would say. Right? So, which means that it's not bad because everybody else is the same situation, right? But it's good in the sense that it's a new opportunity. And so, really, this challenge was always needed for standard business process automation. It's just AI has hyped this up so much that people are like, I need to do something about it now. They can feel it. And also it is able to fill in the gaps that standard business process automation never could, which is that gray area I was talking about. And so it's very normal. I had to run into one situation where people actually had a process written down. And so a part of what I've done, and I do it for free, is we just get on a call and I will draw it up, right? So it's just boxes connecting boxes. You got arrows, paths of data. Part of that is understanding the technology stack that's included, what applications we're connecting to, what data we're using, where is the data. The thing is, all of that is essential for I would say these vertical agents, right, that I'm describing, these custom agents that are meant to fill in for a portion of a human's job, which is what we're talking about. I don't know that we're quite there at a full job. So you might have someone that makes cold calls, but they might also do your social media post, right? So, it's hard to say, like, is it a full job, right? Unless you run a call center and all they do is answer service calls, then maybe, right? But in
So
any case, yeah, the workflow diagram is needed, and we help them.
So, we talk about whether it's a full job or part of a job, and I think that there are folks that are really worried about AI replacing jobs, right? I mean, whether it's more efficient, we can be more productive as companies or as individuals or not. I think that there's some level of, hey, I don't want to kill jobs, right? How do you advise leaders that are worried that AI will begin to replace people on their team? What advice do you offer them, or maybe consolation do you offer them?
Well, I think first the company and the leaders are in control of whether they do that or not, right? People can run 100% manual, but they don't. They don't do pen and paper. They buy software applications to help with that, right? And so at one point in time, and maybe it was paper, and someone would file the paperwork away. Now it's automatically filed through, connection to your CRM and your Dropbox account, whatever, right? So it's kind of the same thing, but a little faster in this case. And so what I would say is people just need to find the problems and then understand what that impact is. Go to the problems first. If the problem has some big impact on the team, then I think it does come to a business decision on what they want to do. And like I said earlier, I would always lean towards upskill and reskill my people, because what that shows is that leadership says, yes, we are investing into innovation, but at the same time, we do recognize talent on the team, and this talent, we want to repurpose them so that way they can be their best selves, because we recognize that they have more to do than what they've been doing, you know? So I find that extremely rewarding as a leader to be able to do something like that. There are some obviously downsides, right? I think I would be lying if I said that this wouldn't slash roles, but like I said, I mean, we're right in front of it. This is not a secret. If it's a repetitive, mundane thing, there's a risk. And so I think that just know the reality, and that's the reality of things, and start to work towards doing something about it. And I just think whether or not that affects the work or workers is really just up to the problem it's solving and the amount of that role that it takes.
Yeah, and I think, we look at it big picture. Even if we're hesitant to kill jobs, right? If we recognize that this may reduce headcount on our teams, we have to be realistic. If we're not leveraging these tools, our competition is going to leverage these tools. And we're not talking about killing some jobs. We're talking about killing our own companies, right? If you're not using the technology that's out there, you can't remain competitive with folks that are saying, "Hey, we're gonna use this. We're gonna outcompete you. We're gonna be quicker to respond. We're gonna be, faster to serve our customers. We're gonna have lower overhead. We're gonna have cost efficiencies," right? Like, I think that's the reality, right? But ethical and security concerns, right? So let's take a step back and just look at, say, like, hey, do we have any are there any considerations that folks should take about what type of processes or what type of data they may be using to or giving access to these AI agents that, as you say, have free will? That's a spooky statement, by the way. The concept of these AI agents with free will, that does creep me out a little bit. So tell me, like, what kind of ethical or security considerations would you advise folks keep in mind as they're looking to leverage AI agents?
Yeah, to be clear, free will, you give them free will in the bounds of their job, right? So meaning that if their job is only to call a customer to convert a lead, but you say, here are 10 examples of what I would like the discussion to go, it's going to use that knowledge base in order to understand how it should handle the conversation. For that's a simple example. So we give it free will, but the free will, what's called the variability of it doing something off, you know, uh, unwanted is low as long as the what we call post training is done correctly. So not a huge concern, but the one that Silicon Valley is promising, there is a lot of concerns with that. So when we think about security, I would answer this in maybe two ways. The current state is that going back to the AI assistants and the agents, right? The AI assistants, and I did this in my training, if you're using consumer-based chatbots, meaning that they buy individual subscriptions, and because 8 out of 10 people bring their own tools to work, while you can go through the settings of each of those accounts and be able to say, don't learn off the data, and we can trust OpenAI that that's the case, the company has no control over that, right? So, the point is I think the easiest thing to do as a leadership team, if you're looking to grow your team's productivity through these AI assistance side, is to shut down all those consumer grade chatbot URLs across their company computers and start adopting a paid service like Microsoft Copilot or Google Gemini for Business. The other reason why that's awesome, because you have control over the learnability of the models of the services that are being used, is because those AI assistants are already what they call grounded in your company data. So you can tag like a file in your Google Drive using Gemini and say, "Hey, give me a summary of that, of that file," right? As opposed to ChatGPT, where you have to download it, drop it in a lot of times, and say like, "Hey, give me that summary." It's just more convenient, just in general, right? So it's worth the expense to do that. So that's like current state simple. What you could do from a security privacy standpoint, especially if you're handling personal identifiable information. You definitely want to stay from, I think, avoiding things like credit card numbers or anything that identifies a customer if you can. HIPAA or finance around Sarbanes-Oxley is a concern, but that's not our industry necessarily. Going to the AI agents, some of the concern is around something called prompt injection. So prompt injection basically is a cyber attack that someone would change the instructions of your agent in order to infiltrate your data. So they might say, hey, they'll change the instructions by just prompting it. They can get access to the agent and then somehow be able to convince the agent to go get something personal for you, whether it's your financials or your customer data. But that's sloppy post training. So when we build agents, the idea is you give it only access to what knowledge and what tools it needs to have access to, which is just APIs, right? So when we say an API, if I wanted to create a lead, in that example of the sales, let's say the agent identifies what's a sales related thing, and then it creates that lead inside of my CRM. What I'm doing is I give it just a Word doc, let's say, that define what is sales related. So it only lives within that knowledge base to define what's sales related. And then when it hits my tool, it only has access to post a lead, which is a part of an API schema, right? That's it. It just posts a lead. I'm not asking it to get a lead. So if I do that sloppily, or if I give it too much access that it doesn't really need, and I say, I want you to post, get, pull all the API call attributes. Now, if someone does a prompt injection, yeah, they could go to your lead information if they can find a way to do that. I don't think most people on this call are a target for this, though, to be frank. But
Yeah, I mean, I use ChatGPT to write a hamster eulogy, so, I feel like
you guys are you're probably okay, right? Like I said, if you do the post training and the engineering's fine, you limit its access to what it only needs to do, there is less of a concern. And now a lot of people think about, is the model going to learn off my data? Again, when you use the API, according to these AI companies, it's not learning off your data, according to them. Now, if they come out and lie about it later in this class action lawsuit, no skin off my back, right? Because we're just literally doing what's being said, and that's, we can't plan for that. But ultimately, you've got majority of AI development uses the API. And I actually started this business thinking I would be all up on open source and like uh, edge use cases where it was hosted on the device. Those are coming out more and more. But fundamentally, like most systems you use, especially to improve operations in your business, are going to be using an API call when it talks to this sort of AI we're using today called generative AI. They're going to use the API because anything else would require the manufacturer, let's say, to host these generative AI models, which is very compute intensive, and most of them can't afford to run something like that. Now, from a small language model standpoint, they can. That's an edge use case, but for what we're doing, we don't. We see narrow use cases for those.
okay, so if a security owner before I ask this question, I'm curious, any of the folks on the call using AI agents today in their business, would you raise your hand if you're using an AI agent? Interesting. Yeah, go ahead and raise your hands if you're wow, AI agents. All right, guys, I want to do these rapid fire just so we get some context here. Don't dive too deep into it. I just want to run through these to understand how you're using it for the sake of everybody else that's on the call. So, Mark Matlock, thanks so much for calling in, Mark. Would you
No
tell us
problem.
real quick, how are you guys using AI agents?
So there's a lot of events in central stations that are non-dispatchable, low batteries, AC fails, things like that, late to test events. And most central stations have said we're not going to respond to those with operators. We can use an IVR. It plays a recorded message. The customer acknowledges the message, and life is good. And that has been the norm in central station for a long time. But we made a strategic decision to move the IVR and replace it with an AI agent, and she is amazing. We call her Ella, Elevated Language Assistant, and she is starting in our environment to manage those non-dispatchable events, and she is incredible versus an IVR that's just a static recording and frankly is usually clunky. They sound and you have a low battery, it sounds very primitive. The AI agent sounds just like a person, and she's amazing. She can answer all your questions. She can give you the alarm company's phone number. She represents herself in the alarm company's name, and she can give all kinds of information on the event that the IVR cannot give. And it's just a better customer experience. It's a better overall representation that the alarm company would want to their customer versus the static IVR.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you guys are doing that. I got a call from a central station. I have between my different offices and house, and I have different central stations they're monitoring. So I won't say specifically what central station, but I got an IVR message, and it was so annoying. It would say, "We're calling you because you are listed as an admin at 2:37," and I'm just like, "Get to the freaking point. What's going on, right?" Yeah, and I'm like, and you can't fast forward. You're just waiting. And so, like, I love send me a text message personally. Like, I just want to see a text. Cool, got it. I think it's so cool to think about how you can use, different ways to communicate people. But I personally believe playing a recorded message is the least cool way to do anything. Like, it's the worst. Nobody wants to listen to a recorded message. Use an AI voice agent if you can. Really cool that you guys are doing that. I know Peter's got some experience implementing some AI into call centers. Peter, tell us a little bit about the AI agents that you're familiar with.
Yeah, as you know, I work with multiple monitoring centers, and we have three right now that initially, like, again, like Mark said, wanted to replace their IVR. for handling on and off tests and specific timings. And it's much smoother because you could speak in a natural voice and in a natural order. But now that they see the results, now they're going to second and third use cases. I mean, you talked about returns. The company, one of the companies I use, their first use case was with the company Fanatics, handling returns for sports memorabilia from beginning to end, doing roadside assistance with AAA. But the monitoring centers or full service centers are using it for anything for scheduling service, following up, to pay your invoices, first call verifications, other verifications. It's just a variety of things because it really works well. And a nice part about it, just like Don had said, you go into a company and you try to figure out where you could apply it, right? That's a big part of this conversation. What they do is because they have such these deep, deep thinking machines as an initial approach, what you'll do is you'll take like 200 recordings of calls, throw it into the thinking machine, and it comes out with a report to say, this is where we could bring you efficiency in automation. And this is where we could bring you efficiency without automation, just on yourself, just suggestions. So the AI will take the recordings to translate that. And the one thing I just want to say, which has nothing to do with the expansion, because you had a big conversation about replacing headcount. And this is what we specifically have found, and I'm sure most companies out there, especially in our industry, are always running a little bit short of quality people. So they're not replacing people. What they're doing is they're bringing up their service levels. It would be wonderful if they were always at 100% capacity. Then maybe potentially it would reduce headcount. But what I've seen in every instance, and again, that's not my company, I've dealt with 4 or 5 companies, is it's not reducing headcount. It's bringing up their service levels and taking the pressure off because they're never running at full capacity. It's just difficult because they're growing, they're attriting. So that's a big part of it that really needs to be understood.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Peter, right? Like I always say, whenever I'm talking to, our dealers, I always say that the most uncomfortable place you could be is at like 110% capacity, 120% capacity, 130% capacity as a small team, because you get to this point where you're over your ability to serve efficiently and well, but you're not quite at that point where you can afford to grow and add an additional person. Even if you could find them, sometimes you find like, hey, we need an extra person. We can't find that extra person, or we don't have that extra person. And so we're all scrambling. Our customer experience might not be as great. Guys, if you had other use cases, and Elizabeth, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to you on that. But if you would, if you throw it into the chat, how you guys are using AI. If you didn't get a chance to share, we'd love to hear the different use cases that you have for AI and AI agents. I'm fired up about this. I think I know that I need to figure this out, right? I know that this is something that I've got to not just think about, but this is something that we have to very quickly figure out how we can implement it. And so, Don, here's the question. Somebody wants to get into this today. Where do they start?
Yeah, I think I would put the technology completely aside and think about the symptom of the problem, which is a repetitive, mundane thing. That's it. That's what we're solving for, right? We want to solve the stuff that we can predict and the things that suck. My favorite problems to solve are the ones that are owned that owners hate. Like I had an owner of it was like I think a $16 million environmental company that was spending 4 hours a day on an issue. And I know how much money this guy makes, and that's a lot of money. And we built an agent, to solve the problem. He was looking for a very reasonable price. And, he was like, done, like, let's go. Like, because those are the ones where you're just like, I just want it to go away. And those are easy because what that does is wherever your mindset is on the technology adoption curve, you will move over to say, I just need to do. Because that's a lot of what we're talking about is just go. Find something that you can bet on that you're like, this is worth at minimum having some experiential money aside to show that I'm trying to solve problems in this AI era that we're in. And the good news is like this stuff, like we've seen when we run, because we go through in our development cycle, up to the part where we're at the demo, it's borderline flawless every time. Now going in production is different, right? And so that can take there's some nuances with that. But what I'm saying is we can take the vision and then bring it to the reality of where it gives people the confidence to be like, oh wow, Because all you need, and I did this in my AA training that I run the other week, is you need to see everyone, including myself, like some crawl, walk, run, and then fly aspect to this. So the crawl is solve one problem. Don't go try to boil the ocean. Or if you get a bunch of problems, prioritize the one you can start with. Your walk is now go to your departments and get a bigger list and then start to do several more. So instead of one, maybe you're doing 4. And at the point to do the run is when you have a roadmap. So how many times have we heard from the manufacturers, oh, that's on the roadmap? Well, you're probably now going to build your own agent roadmap where it's like, oh, in Q3, we're releasing the RMA agent, that we've been building, and that's going to solve this problem. And then you just start to build your own roadmap. Because one of the things I didn't mention this on the call earlier that the whole AI and the technology community knows is that agents eat software for breakfast, meaning that the agent can get in many cases directly to what they call the CRUD database, or basically your database layer, and skip over the application layer completely. So in the future, what this could look like is that you're just talking or texting to some agent and it will interact to your database with you, right? Or do stuff on a task-based command. And so what that means is that what you're investing into when you do these sorts of things is the future of your technology that runs your business, and a lot less of something that's more that's temporary. Think of it like an asset, that you're running your business. Like who's going to sell more as an integrator? One that has 20% of automation run through AI, or the one that's still, in the same situation?
Very cool. Awesome conversation. Really enjoyed this topic. You talked about crawl, walk, run. You didn't say what fly was, but I like to think fly is you fire everybody. Your entire company runs on AI, and you make an infinite amount of money. I'm just kidding. I don't think that's it, but I think you can increase your efficiency. Obviously, increase productivity, improve your customer experience, crush your competition, right? Because we all want to crush the competition. Really enjoyed having you on today, Don. I want to thank everybody else that joined the call today. Guys, I want to invite you. First of all, if you do business with us today, I want to thank you for the opportunity to support your business. It really is an honor to be your distributor of choice, to print your logo on the products that you prefer. I want to invite you, if we don't yet have the opportunity to serve your business, to reach out. Feel free to just send me a note. Let's connect. Let's see how we can support you. But whether you do business with us or not, I want you to know you're always welcome on this call. We are thankful for the opportunity to have you on every week. We'll be back online next Friday at 11 a.m. And again, Don, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. Great to meet everyone. I love this. This is great.
Thanks so much. Have a great Labor Day weekend, everyone.